Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Snap No Tap podcast. Oh, I'm blurred. I'm Tony Cecchine, and of course, it wouldn't be a podcast without Joe Cardinal. I mean, it wouldn't even be America without Joe Cardinal. And Joe will introduce our special guest coming up in a minute or so. What's up, Joe? And plug our seminars, and how you doing?
I'm doing okay, Tony. Glad to be here again. Yeah, most importantly, next weekend, we got our seminars coming up. So next Saturday, or would it be this Saturday at this point, at Bender's Martial Arts and Fitness, that's the 21st at 1:30 p.m. And then that Sunday, we've got a seminar at DuPage Krav Maga. We'll have the links below if you're watching this in YouTube to Tony's website where it has all the information. Of course, always go to Tony's website. You can download digital videos there or sign up for our membership program. Again, that's a monthly, there's two levels. Level one is kind of a thank you Patreon style thing where if you appreciate this podcast and what we're doing here, you just sign up for a very small thank you amount, $5. I think everybody can spring for that who's listening and watching, And then there's also the $10 amount where you get some additional video content that's not available elsewhere that we produce. And, it can either come from the seminars or stuff Tony's working on, but that's unique to people who do the $10 a month. And like I said, anything you can do is always appreciated. Have I left anything out, Tony? Does that cover all our bases?
Well, you haven't mentioned what everybody tunes in to find out what's going on in your life. What's been up since last week with you, Joe?
Well, always exciting stuff. I've got extra time with my mother right now because of some family circumstances are going on. And, you always talk about my celebrity status. And another thing that just reinforces that is that I found out that I'm very good at Celebrity Jeopardy, hanging out with my mother. So, which would make sense, but it's just, I'd say more proof to what you were saying about my status kind of in place in the world.
Well, it's like godlike is what it is.
Really, but they don't have God Jeopardy yet, at least. So,
that's because they haven't had you on yet.
Right, that's true. I am playing at home, but I have fared fairly well. I definitely dominate my mother when it comes to Celebrity Jeopardy. She doesn't have a chance, but I also play very well. So I think that's been the big excitement for me this week.
Well, what's been exciting for me and shocking, well, not really shocking, but the reading on the internet about what's going on in France and how so many women in France now they're having mental breakdowns psychologically because you're no longer in the country and they feel that they missed out on an opportunity. And yet on the flip side, like the men, the alcoholism rate's gone up because the men are celebrating that you left and now they have a chance with the women. It's just, you have that weird dynamic going on, Joe.
Well, and like I said, I really appreciated, even though I did have that kind of an impact, that while I was there, they treated me just like everybody else. There was no special treatment for me. I was just an average person. That just showed how classy they were, really. There was nothing special. No one asked for my autograph or no one wanted to take a selfie. That's the kind of, treatment you expect when you go to a classy city like Paris to get treated like that. So,
good for you.
Yeah. So, but I think they'll cover, most places recover after I leave. There's usually that after effect, that shock wave, but then things eventually come back to normal. They achieve kind of an equilibrium. So just, I say, hang in there, people, and you'll deal with it. And always tune into the pod. If they need something else, always tune into the podcast.
Yeah.
So.
Well, why don't you introduce our very special guest this week? Tell them how we know him and then go from there.
Gosh, well, I'm really excited to have Artie on here, Artie Grubba. Uh, I have heard about him long before I got to meet him. He's just always been kind of a fixture in the grappling community, definitely in the Chicagoland area. So I'm very excited to hear his story. But then we actually met him pre-COVID at a seminar we did at one of the schools that I don't even remember, was it 2018, 2019? So we got to get on the mat a little bit and do some training with you. So that was pretty exciting. But yeah, welcome Artie Grubba.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Really excited.
Yeah, and
Yeah, we're glad to have you.
for sure. So, I mean, let's start at the beginning, Artie. Artie, where did you grow up? What did you do growing up? Did you play any sports or did you get into grappling right away?
Yeah, I grew up in Romeoville, Illinois, southwest suburbs. Tried karate when I was 5 years old, and I went once and I hated it. I played soccer for a while from like age 6 through 13. Started wrestling 10 years old. The year before that, actually, I was on my church's basketball team, and I did not score a single basket, so that did not pan out too well. But no, I actually started wrestling. I was 10 or 11 with the goal in mind of one day becoming ECW heavyweight champion. I was most displeased to show up to the first practice, and they didn't have a ring set up, but got past that eventually. Played high school football, wrestled all through high school, went to college, wrestled there as well. Coached at a college out in Kentucky, coached also at Harper College a bit, Hampshire High School. Worked a fair amount of different jobs, different I was customer service team lead for MMA warehouse, worked with companies like Honda, Goodwill, doing some different kind of stuff.
Let's circle back a little bit. What college did you wrestle for?
My first 2 years, I was actually at Elmhurst. When I was in college, that's when there was that big financial crash and just made Elmhurst not doable anymore after 2 years. So I transferred to Calumet College out in Whiting, Indiana. I had a pretty good experience there. Elmhurst wasn't working out for a variety of reasons. I was a backup at the time to a guy who ended up being a 3-time All-American. It just wasn't for me. The culture wasn't right. And then on top of that, with the money situation, I got it to Calumet. Things were a lot better there. I wrestled 2 years there, heavyweight my junior year, then dropped down to 197 for my senior year, qualified for nationals both times. I got to be an academic All-American, team captain, all fun stuff. My grappling submission background also, that I right after my freshman year of college, I basically was just trying to find somewhere to get on the mat. It's a lot harder to find spring wrestling when you're in college as opposed to when you're in high school. And I talked with one of my old club team coaches, Joey Gilbert, runs Gilbert Grappling. And he also runs, both youth wrestling as well as adult MMA. So I started coming to his MMA class. Problem we ran into there, it was all very experienced guys, and they never taught anything. It was literally just warm up and then spar. So I took a lot of licks in there. Glad I did, though. I had a lot of fun at the same time. Yeah, that's where I started, I guess.
I actually filmed a video it's at Elmhurst College in their wrestling room, which was a very nice wrestling room. And
it's very nice. It's a bit small. We actually during the season we roll out multiple mats in the gym, and that's really only for smaller workouts during the season, but nice room for sure.
Oh yeah, it was a bad experience for me though, only not because of Elmhurst, but I had booked a thing there and I had to do it. And I had food poisoning. Elmhurst College had absolutely nothing to do with it. I was at a restaurant the day either. I don't remember now because this was in the probably 95 or 96, something like that. But I mean, I blew up and everything. I mean, I just was like, matter of fact, 3 times the filming had to stop because I was vomiting. It was like I was so sick. It was like the first time I ever had food poisoning. So that's my Elmhurst College experience.
A lot of times when people watch your videos, they vomit too. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah. It's like the bulimic style of wrestling. You know what I mean?
Don't miss that.
Yeah. But no, it was so, I I think I've known you, not met you, but known you through emails or whatever for years,
Probably
10 at least.
20, yeah, probably like 2014 or so. I remember it's back when I was working at MMA Warehouse. I remember that's when I think I started emailing with you. So that'll be like 2013, 14 or so.
Yeah, so that's about 10 years. Yeah, 9
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Questions, Joe? That's your line.
Yeah, so originally as a kid, you wanted to be, you saw pro wrestling and that's what kind of piqued your interest in it. But you
Yeah.
stuck with it. Were you kind of a natural to it, or did it come to you easily,
Oh,
or
God,
how were
no.
those early years?
So I started in sixth grade for my junior high team, and I was just crap. Uh, I was a chubby little unathletic kid. Even though I played soccer for a while, I was, compared to other people my age and weight, I was, relatively physically weak, slow. Really, the only beneficial natural attribute I had was flexibility. Always been flexible, so made it a lot easier to escape certain things. Um, but yeah, I was just really, really bad. I was, I won a total of 6 matches a year. I was like 6-20. Um, I did end up winning the most dedicated wrestler award, though. That's the one trophy that I will always keep. And yes, it's technically a participation trophy, but it's the top participation trophy, I guess you want to call it that, best participant.
Mhm.
But no, the part of that was, there was only so many JV events during the year. Like, they're doing dual meets, you'd match up and you get some JV matches, of course, but tournament wise, there was, I think, 2 only. However, the varsity tournaments, if there's an opening in the bracket, like if, they like the brackets being even 16, if there's like, only 13, 14 guys there, because different schools would have a forfeit of that weight, they let some JV guys in. Usually it would be someone from the home team because they'd be around. It was actually pretty uncommon for a JV guy to come with the varsity team. But, I do it because worst case scenario, I get to watch the varsity guys wrestle, support my teammates, hopefully learn something. And best case scenario, I go in and get some matches. I would show up on weight for my normal weight class, 126, but usually I'd have to bump up to 135 for some reason because that's just where the openings have tended to be sometimes. And then even one time I had to chug a couple bottles of water, so I'd be over 126, so I could bump up to 145. That was a bad experience. 0 stars out of 5, not recommended. I took 8th place out of 8 that day, and actually got disqualified in that last match because I blocked my hands for an illegal headlock during the overtime. Rookie move, I suppose. Yeah, 6th grade, I just sucked. But like I said, those 6 wins, they made me really appreciate it enough to fall in love with the sport. My, spring wrestling has, very small number of participants compared to in-season wrestling. And we had, I had a huge team at my middle school. We had like 50, 60 guys. It was pretty popular. But then for spring wrestling, there was like 5 or 6 of us. I showed up and I was by far the worst one. I got my butt handed to me every single day because it was really, 5 of the better guys on the team and then me. And, I was the little pud 6th grader working out with the 8th grader, 2-time state placer who's 2 weight classes above me. So I took some beatings there, but I think it helped me in the long run, of course. 7th grade, I did a little better. I was, probably even record. Again, did the same thing, showing up to all the varsity meets, and I probably something like 15-15, don't quote me. But so that's 30 matches, and most JV guys would only get like 12, 15 matches a year. So I was getting in overtime. 8th grade, I was still pretty unathletic, but I was learning and getting more resourceful. I went to the state tournament, didn't win any matches, but made it there at least. Was on the varsity all year. Went to high school. Over the summer between junior high and high school, I actually qualified to go to a national tournament in Virginia Beach. That was a lot of fun. I didn't win any matches, but I got to see a really high level of wrestling. Freshman year of high school, I was still an athletical pud. I played football, but was never really got too into it. I I won most of my matches that year because I was wrestling at the freshman level against a lot of guys that didn't have prior wrestling background. You know,
Mm.
I'd say probably less than half the middle schools in Illinois have a wrestling program. And just based on the geography and teams we were competing against, it was a lot of areas that didn't have junior high wrestling or even club wrestling. So even though the guys were, you know, more athletic than me, I was 3 years ahead in like technical and tactical style, and was able to, again, don't quote me, probably something like 25-3. But again, that was just freshman level, no varsity. And then hit a big growth spurt. I grew 6 inches over the summer while only gaining about 10 pounds. So that made me from, you know, little tree stump into someone, you know, I got to be 5'11" at that point, so above average height, I guess. So that I really grew in my frame and, you know, did a lot better that year. I was on JV. The varsity guys were ahead of me. You know, these are the same guys that have been kicking my ass for like, you know, 5 years, and I just mentally couldn't beat them in a match. You know, I do well in practice, but just couldn't make it happen in a match. So, you know, I was JV that year. I went undefeated on JV, which, you know, is what it is. It's something.
Yeah.
You know, they have a freshman sophomore state tournament. I went to that. I was a match away from placing, going against all guys that were varsity all year. And then I really picked up over the summer. Like that's where I made my biggest jump, probably in just grappling overall, was the summer between sophomore and junior years of high school. I started doing freestyle and Greco that year. I took to Greco really fast because I've always been more of a thrower. I started getting into freestyle, and Northwestern used to host actually a national tournament in springtime for freestyle and Greco. And that was my first ever freestyle tournament, was a national event. And I ended up actually beating some guy who was, you know, I beat a lot of people that were better than me, but I beat him on that one day. So I got this really tough guy from Iowa. You know, after wrestling JV for a season, I beat an Iowa State champion basically. Got into, you know, like competed around the country, ended up going to like the big national event for Team Illinois. Won a couple matches, didn't place though. You know, it's a huge tournament, like around 100 guys per bracket, and I was still pretty green. And then, you know, my junior high school, I got to be varsity, but I ended up wrestling up a weight all year because there was 3 seniors at the weight class below me. I could beat all 3 of them, so I was going to be on varsity, but they wanted to give, you know, the senior preference of weight class, which I get that, I suppose. So I did pretty well that year. I got to sectionals, didn't go to state. South Sub was a really tough area for wrestling, you know, especially back then. You know, between just, I don't know if you follow high school wrestling, but back then Carl Sandburg and Providence, both in our sectional, both extremely tough, nationally ranked teams. You know, that's, you know, but like I said, that big jump I made the season previous, part of that was I wrestled 100 matches in the off season. That's basically 3 seasons of wrestling in 6 months. You know, like I say, junior went to sectionals. I was up a weight class wrestling 215, weighing 185, but I got a lot of experience that year. Again, don't quote me on the record. Let's say about 30-10, decent. Senior year, I ended up able to go my right weight class, 189. That was pretty fun. Finally, did well. I was bigger than a lot of the guys actually, and I was starting to come into my own. You know, I was never like, you know, elite athlete physique, but I was, you know, at least able to compete with those guys. And went to the state tournament. I won my first match, and then ended up getting beat by the eventual state champion. And then after that, got beat by this Mount Prospect guy that played state a few times. So, you know, it was a fun experience. Illinois, if you guys weren't aware, is one of the elite wrestling states. So I had, you know, the both pleasure and displeasure of going against some really awesome guys. My senior year, again, I'd say my record something like 35-8, 35-7. You know, when I ended up wrestling in college, like high school, like I went to the nationals a bunch of times. Never placed at the big national events, but always won a few matches. Was 1 match away from placing in Greco, so that was cool, but still, I guess, bitter about it. So yeah, I got to travel around a lot with Team Illinois, wrestle with them. Went to college, ended up, like I said, at Elmhurst. My freshman year, I was not ready at all for college wrestling. It was a different pace, you know, academically, athletically, and just socially and just in life. I wasn't ready for it. Um, I was a 197 pounder, which I should have been a weight class down at 184, but I just couldn't put it together, I guess, at that point. Um, Rough season. I mean, I probably had like a break even record. I mean, if we're continuing to estimate, let's call it 10 and 10. Wasn't starter, I was behind some pretty good guys. I did okay in a few like opens, so I placed in a few opens, which beating a lot of guys starters from other places. And then sophomore year was really a repeat of that. I was at that year, I actually bumped up to heavyweight. My weight kind of got out of control. I was dealing with some eating issues back then and couldn't make it come together to be at the right weight class. But I fared decent at heavyweight because I was able to finally have a quickness advantage and able to out leverage a lot of guys and not have to really go muscle on muscle, which was beneficial usually. Again, I was probably somewhat like 10 and 10 that year, but I actually won 2 open tournaments, which was pretty cool. Junior year, I transferred to Calumet. I was still at heavyweight because they needed someone at heavyweight more than 197 or 184. We had a couple of guys in each of those, and I was basically, we only had 2 options. I had me and one other guy who I was able to beat pretty handily. So I was heavyweight that year, ended up qualifying for the national tournament, was actually a match away from placing that year. I really had a rough start to that season, but picked it up near the end. Yeah, so like I said, I went to nationals, match away from placing. My senior year, I got down to 197. My weight was really out of control before that, so I dropped from 260 down to 197 over the course of about 3 months. That was not healthy at all. I did it the complete wrong way. I wish I would have known then what I know now. A lot of very low calorie diet, excessive working out, even, taking ice baths, both for this alleged calorie burning effects, along with getting my legs fresh so I can go run again after that. So making 197 was rough. Like I said, I did it wrong. If I had a better idea of what to do, it would have been a lot easier. It was a really rough season for me. I probably had about a break even record. I want to say like 15 and 15, not how you want to spend your senior year. I wrestled 197 all year except one tournament. I did wrestle heavyweight. Reason being for like ranking and stuff in the NAI division, which is what I wrestle. Like it's separate from NCAA, but for ranking and stuff in that division, you get more points for bigger brackets, if that makes sense. Like if you win an event with 8 guys in it, you get 3 points. But if you win an event with 12 guys in it, you get, like 5 points. So we had our heavyweights trying to get to nationals, and I bumped up just to make the bracket bigger and get them more points. Our assistant coach actually wrestled in the open too, which is pretty fun. But that was an event that I did pretty well at. One of the guys that beat me was actually Curtis Blades, if you guys know who that is from UFC. That was a rough match. So I wrestled heavyweight that one event and felt pretty good at it. And I almost wish I would have went heavyweight to finish the year, even though I was making weight okay by that point. The style really suited me a lot better, to be honest. If I'm able to have a quickness advantage, that's more beneficial to my style than having a strength advantage over somebody. I'm comfortable enough to leverage. I have a low enough center of gravity that I don't need to go muscle on muscle that much. Then yeah, senior year came and went. I ended up going to nationals that year, but ran into the guy who eventually took 5th. First match, lost to him, and then second match, I ended up tearing both my LCL and PCL in my knee. Not pleasant injury to go through at all, but I thankfully was able to recover without surgery. After that, I had no idea what I wanted to do really, other than coach. So I went down to University of the Cumberlands in Kentucky. Beautiful place, little tiny college tucked in the mountains. I was an assistant coach there for a year. Didn't really work out the best, honestly. I wasn't ready to be a coach in a lot of ways. I had a lot of holes in my wrestling. I was, a bit of an unorthodox style because, I started so unathletic. I had to be unorthodox and resourceful to win. I wasn't going to win, doing a lot of the other stuff people did. I never really shot too many single legs. I've never shot a double leg in competition in my life. But on the other side of that coin, you know, I still hold both the reversal and pin records in my high school. I still hold the pin record in my college. So I was good at that. But yeah, I just wasn't ready to be a coach or really, you know, understand the sport of wrestling well enough. I had to learn a lot of stuff. I had to learn a lot my own that year. Still, like, you know, I was, you know, my main use honestly was the practice partner for the bigger guys. They did pretty well that year, so that was awesome to see. They didn't bring me back because they wanted to, first off, like I said, I didn't do the best. And then second off, they wanted to have alumni on staff, which is totally reasonable. You know, I just got to take care of your alumni. And they had two guys that were graduating that really wanted in. So instead of making them fight for it, they bumped me, which I mean, to an extent I get. Year after that, I went and coached at Harper College out in Palatine, had a lot of fun there. You know, a lot of the guys I wrestled in springtime at Gilbert Grappling were actually a lot of Harper guys. And I go up to their practices sometimes, you know, when Gilbert didn't have anything, because they did a lot of grappling. Mike Kelly, the assistant, who was then the assistant coach at Harper, and now coaches the high school of Wisconsin. But anyways, he was basically, if not for him, I wouldn't be sitting here right now talking to you guys. You know, he was the guy that made me fall in love with the sport of wrestling again at, you know, points in college where I was getting pretty dejected about how things were going. He basically showed me that you don't have to quit when you're done with college. He showed me that, you know, if you enjoy it enough, if you want to pursue it, you know, there's no sense in not doing it. So a lot of credit to him, you know, practice partner and coach for years and years. But anyways, he's the one who got me coaching at Harvard with him. Had a lot of fun there. You know, I was able to learn a lot from the coaches there. I mean, if you guys didn't know, Harper's multiple time national champions in the junior college level. They're actually a non-scholarship team, but then beating the scholarship teams out. So that's really, you know, I always thought that was impressive about them. After that, got out of coaching, you know, ended up going to MMA Warehouse. But, you know, I started like the grappling with Gilbert, and then kept at it with the Harper guys. Floated around a bunch of places because I was moving around a bit. I went to New Breed up at Niles for a while. Awesome quality guys there. Mark Vivas, the head coach, my first time I went there, made it feel like it was my first day on the mat. I'd been wrestling for all those years, and he just, you know, had such good control of the gi that I was unfamiliar with, and I couldn't do nothing. From there, you know, I went to a few places out in Elgin, met up with Paul at a place called South Elgin Budokan. I was there doing judo under Thomas O'Shaughnessy, very amazing guy, real hidden gem. And Paul was the jiu-jitsu coach, and he ended up, you know, after the judo coach unfortunately passed away, Paul ended up opening a straight blast gym up in Elgin. And yeah, that brings us, you know, pretty much to when we met, Joe.
Wow, a lot there in that story. It's been really interesting to hear, and I mean, some
of
observations and questions. Yeah, I mean, for one, I always like to hear the stories of the guys who are not like naturally gifted at it, you know, but love it and stick with it. We've had a couple guys on here, you know, like
Yeah.
you said, right? You know, a lot of people, I think, when they start in it, you know, if they don't succeed right away, they kind of want to give up, you know,
Yeah,
and
and that's, you know, there was times where I wouldn't say there was ever a time I wanted to quit, and when I was in sixth grade, but there were a lot of times where I did not want to wake up at 5 a.m. and get on the bus to maybe wrestle, maybe sit in the bleachers all day. There were some times where I was, you know, just not feeling it. But my dad, you know, he was never a hard ass about it, but he reminded me, you know, if you want to do this, this is what you got to do. And I went.
did your dad wrestle at all?
He only wrestled for a year when he was in junior high, but he ended up being a coach with our team for a while. You know, when you're coaching junior high, you don't really need the most wrestling experience. You know, just coaching experience more valuable than sport experience at that point. So
You mentioned there was a shift when you went from high school to college. What were some of the differences, at least at the wrestling level, that like
yeah,
made it tough?
some of the big things were, you know, everybody there is, you know, a pretty tough guy. There's, you know, not too many college wrestlers for average wrestlers in high school. Even at, you know, the Division III and junior college level, there's a lot of state champions. There's a lot of state placers there. You know, it's tough. Wrestling college is tough. I'm not gonna lie. You know, it's not for everybody. It was something that I wanted to do, and I'm glad I did. I also had, opportunities to play football in college instead, which would have been fun, maybe not. Like I said, I never really got too into football. It's just something I did for 4 years. But yeah, the pace of a lot of the difference here. First thing, the pace of it. College, you're gonna see a much faster pace, much more offensive based style. The refs are calling stalling a lot faster. Basically, I mean, if you get pushed out of bounds a couple times, or if you're taking back steps, you're gonna get dinged for stalling real fast. There's not much room for bouncing around and bouncing out there. You're seeing guys, that are lifting weights on a continuous basis. I never was, like I said, too athletic. I lifted weights in high school. I was in the weightlifting gym class, and I tried, but I never really saw great results. I just wasn't my thing, I suppose. I, curiously enough, actually held the flex arm hang record in my high school, which weird thing to do. And I also was like top 5 for the sit and reach of all time, which again, I was flexible. But the flexibility in college actually became detracting, because if no matter how flexible you are, if they're strong enough, they're going to get you to the end of your range of motion, and you're gonna go with them, even though it might take longer. And I had a lot of people say I was a frustrating guy to take down. I'd actually get taken down a lot. Whether I made it tough for them, kudos to me, I guess. So like the strength thing was a huge thing. Everybody was so freaking strong. This didn't make a huge difference. Matches in college were actually 1 minute longer. The 3-minute first period, it was a bit of an adjustment for me. When you're used to wrestling only 2-minute periods. And another big factor was the length of the season. So playing football for me in high school in the fall was basically taking a break. Because at that, I wasn't wrestling every day. I wrestled every day from basically start of wrestling season November till end of the national season, end of July, and then I just go do football. And football was like where I recovered and rested. They, college wrestling, though, to get back on track, you start in August. When you report to campus, you are expected at wrestling workouts, unofficially, of course, per the NCAA rules, but unofficially, you are expected at wrestling workouts 6 days a week. Whether that's a 6 a.m. morning run and lift, or like an actual wrestling practice, or a few times we went out to the like a toboggan hill and ran the stairs. Whether it was, all those things, you were 6 days a week starting in August on wrestling pace. And that was a rough adjustment, because football was not, like I said, that was my recovery time. I went straight from wrestling nationals into this new college wrestling pace. On top of that, too, I was commuting to college from Romeo to Elmhurst. That was about 45 minutes each way in traffic. So that actually took a toll on me. Commuting sucks. I've never been one of those people that enjoys driving. So that was really not something I enjoyed. And then on top of that, too, is it's a lot more physical too. The referees let you get away with a lot of stuff that maybe in high school would be called as potentially dangerous or unnecessary roughness. You can do a lot more roughness and I wouldn't say slams, but rougher takedowns in college. It was just something I wasn't ready for, and eventually I did end up doing better, and like I said, going to nationals and thriving a bit more. But it is a big step up.
Yeah, it is interesting. So you think it's just kind of the necessary limitations on high school, that they just maybe don't prepare everybody to make that transition? It doesn't seem like there's a linear progression. It seems like it's just like a major step up to the big ones.
A lot of it depends on the high school too, Joe.
Yeah, you're going to see your more elite high schools being a little bit secretive and having, wrestling practice every day in the fall. Like even like a lot of morning stuff. A lot of schools will have morning practice, even if you're in football, soccer, whatever. If you want to wrestle, you're still expected to those morning practices, which might be not even wrestling. It might be lifting and running, but that's a lot more than most people do. Like I said, football is my rest time. Football, I was on not a very good team, and it really wasn't anything that it kind of kept me fit, but didn't get me any fitter, if I can honestly admit it. Um, so it's trying to think of it, and there's a big, from what I've heard as well, there's a big step up from high school to college football. It's you really focus on getting so many more elite athletes in one place.
Well, there's a school outside of Cleveland, but there's a neighboring suburb, Lakewood, St. Ed's, and they're St. Edward's Catholic school. They're the most dominant high school wrestling program probably in the history of the country. I mean, if you could probably look it up while we're doing the podcast, Joe. I think in the
Academy, them and Blair Academy, definitely.
I can't hear you.
St. Ed's and Blair Academy also, I'd say, they're in a pretty close tie for like top high school program of all time, especially in the last 50 years.
Yeah, I think in the last 40, St. Ed's has won 25 state titles, and I don't know how. Joe, you can probably look it up while we're doing this thing. It's just a tremendous. So I'm sure I know that around the country there's going to be other schools, just like with football, football, high school football, there's kids that their parents, when the kids are in 6th, 7th grade, maybe even sooner, they're already thinking, man, my kid's going to go and play high school football or wrestle, and they make the appropriate changes, like they move, or if it's a parochial school, they're putting money away.
Transfer, and that happens a lot. Like, I mean, one team I think of is Glenbar North High School out in Carroll Stream. One of the top programs in Illinois for the longest time. They've been frequently top 25 nationally. They're one of those teams that they're doing those morning workouts every day.
Yeah.
If you're in football or soccer, you are there at 6 a.m. You are running, you're lifting, you're wrestling, you are basically in wrestling season all year long. And they wrestle extensively in the off season. That's one of those places where you're getting 12 months of wrestling from some quality coaches.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I've known one of the things back when my day in high school, a lot of the high school football coaches wanted their football players to wrestle just to stay in shape. Not that they, didn't expect them to become Dan Gables, but, because the wrestling conditioning was great. For me, track and field was blisteringly tough, because I was a sprinter. So the workouts were different, for me. Like you said, wrestling was harder than football. Well, to me, track was harder than football.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I actually did go to one day of track practice, and I was just dreadfully bored. I'm very easily bored. I've honestly I've never really enjoyed running. They kind of wanted me to come out to be the one of the mile runners of all things. Because we ran so much in wrestling, and if you think about it this way, the faster you run, the faster you're done. So that was my thinking. I don't know why I went to single track practice, but I didn't go back. Those people that work out for the sake of working out, I can't do it.
Yeah, I've talked to guys who played college football, and the big thing is the speed. That's what everyone has said, the same thing. The level of speed is, and that's interesting to me because I had my goals set on being a world-class sprinter. I mean, my goal in life was to run in the Olympics, 100 meters. That's awesome. So when I hear them talk about that, I can understand that, because this may sound weird, but I was so freaking fast that when you're talking about guys at another level above, faster than me, that's mind blowing, because I know how fast I could run and the things that I could do. And yet these guys would leave me in the dust.
I mean, at every sport, as I say, there's levels to this,
Yeah.
There's a lot of guys that I spank, run, and beat like they're nothing, and there's guys that do that very same thing to me. It's there's so many different levels and hierarchies. Like it's unreal, how good some of these people are. The fact that I'm able to go out and I win a lot of local tournaments, and even some bigger events too. Even though I'm able to go win those, there's guys that will beat the living piss out of me, and it's just that big step up in levels. The guys that do in Abu Dhabi versus the guys competing locally, it's a big step up. It's huge.
Yeah, the comparison with, you know, people used to ask me about was between speed and strength. And I said, to me, the disparity in speed is greater because you're talking about, and I'm talking about in 100 meters, you know, small or 200 meters, because you're talking about very, very tiny numbers. Okay, so here, for example, in 1982, I ran a 10-600 meters, no wind. The world record was 9.95. So I was, you know, let's just call it 0.6 of a second off the world record. Now, when you tell somebody that doesn't understand track, you were 0.6, you were a half a second off the world record. Wow, look how close you were. No, I wasn't close at all.
But yeah, exactly. When you're talking about such a short distance, it's not, you know, how big is the number, it's how what's that percent like. That's what's
exactly. But now when you're talking about strength, you know, if you're 10 pounds off a world record, that's close. But you know, you'd have to be about 100 pounds off the world record to compare to being a half a second off the sprints. It's just an incredible thing. So
think about the units we're using here. If we break them into thousands or et cetera, whatever, et cetera, you know, someone's lifting 800 pounds. Yeah, that's amazing. Someone's lifting, you know, 790. That's amazing. But you know, even if someone's saying, "Oh, I'm only 100 pounds off the world record," that's, you know, still a significant percentage wise.
Yeah.
And with the speed too, like, yeah, like I said, you were 0.6 of a second from a world record. Yeah, but when you think of it, also you were, you know, trying to think of a way to phrase this. You were at, I don't have a calculator. I'm not the best on the spot math, but you were to that percent away from world record. That might be like a more, you know, straightforward way of comparing it. You know, when you think about it.
It's not world class speed. You know, back in my day, you had to run 10.2s to be considered a world class sprinter, because on any given day, if you're running a 10.2 and the record was 9.9, or, you know, let's call it close enough 10 flat almost, yeah, you have a chance of winning. But when you're running 10.6 at your best, at your worst, you're probably running a 10.9, maybe even 11. You're not going to be competitive unless everybody is falling over in the track meet. So yeah, but when you talk to people who don't understand sports, you know, they can't gauge it. But yeah, again too, with the strength, I've seen some massive, like Brian Klaus, massively strong, powerlifting strong. It's just, you sit back and you're like, how do people do this? You know, it's like, wow, it's levels.
I mean, if we can be honest, you know, right now I'm about 215 pounds. I would be a little bit surprised if I could bench press my own weight right now. Part of that's due to a shoulder injury, but part of it is, you know, I've just never been, you know, able to put up good numbers in the weight room.
Well, I've been cutting a lot of weight, losing weight permanently, you know, and I don't lift heavy like you because of so many injuries. Matter of fact, I just went to the Joe, what do you call it? The not neurosurgeon, orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah.
On Monday to check out my shoulder thing, my collarbone. Turns out it's my collarbone, but it's an injury he's never seen before, and there's really nothing they can do about it. He gave me a shot of cortisone. That didn't help. So for me, what happens right here, there's he calls it tissue behind the collarbone. That's what's giving me the problems here. And it's like, it snaps. Like, imagine a rubber band snapping on you. So sometimes if I just lift in the wrong way or put my shirt on, like right there, it just did it.
Yeah.
And so I got to do a follow-up now in like 3 more weeks. It was like 4 weeks. But there's really, he said they could do a scan. But so he basically said the reason, blah, blah, blah here, just don't do any exercises that cause you that pain, because there's nothing we're going to be able to do for you. And at my age, you know, you can expect it. So yeah, I'm not worrying about lifting heavy anymore. So that's why perfect timing for me to permanently be at a lighter weight. I don't need to be my powerlifting weight anymore. Why carry the extra 30 pounds when I don't need it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like I said, I'm about 215 now. At one point of my heaviest, I was pretty close to 280. So I mean, carrying on that weight, it takes a toll on you, you know. I did the way I lost all of it was by basically cutting out, I stopped drinking like pop, any soft drinks entirely, whether sugared or diet. That's like one of the best, you know, that's the best dietary choice I've ever made in my life, was cutting that stuff out. So it's also that, and doing a lot of low carb. I got down, you know, without ever going hungry, which was great.
Well, that's good. And fasting helps me.
Yeah, I mean, and
Intermittent.
the nice thing was the way the low carb diet felt with me is I could do fasting and never really felt that hungry.
Yeah.
And it was great. You know, it's something I'm not, I don't eat the best diet today. I'm still watch what I eat, and that's how I've been able to stay down at 215. But no, like being that heavy, it takes a toll on your joints. You know, it's not good for your body. And, you know, I just feel so much better, smaller, I guess.
Well, I can give people, because I'm in the midst of this now. My blood pressure, my cholesterol, those were the two bad things. I went to the regular doctor like 8 days ago or something. So let's call that about a week. I lose track. Everything is perfect. I mean, like balls on, like absolutely perfect with that. And, you know, she asked me, how'd you lose this? What's going on? Are you sure you're dieting? I said, yeah. She wanted to know how I did it. She's like, tell me. I'm like, look. And I explained, I was taking care of my mom all these years. I couldn't cook. I couldn't leave the room. So everything was popping in the microwave.
Yeah.
So for you, it was soda pop. I quit that years ago for the most part. But for me, it was processed foods, you know, frozen foods and shit.
And
Can't do that, man.
When I was doing low carb, a lot of it got cut out just because so much of it was carb heavy. Like the thing I ate the most more than anything else was eggs. And, you know, just eating things that are really like, you know, closer to, you know, smaller ingredient list, the better. Essentially, like you're not getting the processed, unnatural stuff, not the preservative. You know, you're eating real food. You're eating eggs. You're eating beef. You're eating, you know, salt and spices and lettuce and tomatoes, whatever. You're not eating, you know, chemicals that you can't pronounce. You're not eating byproducts and waxes and additives.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, outside of injury, my biggest problem is my memory loss, you know, my brain issues. Now that's diet's not gonna change that for me. But outside of that, I feel good, never mind the injuries. But yeah,
Have you ever,
it's just
one thing I might, you know, if you want to think about it, Tony, eggs. Reason being, eggs have choline in it.
yeah.
Choline,
Oh, I eat eggs.
yeah, good. Yeah, when choline gets to the brain, it basically becomes acetylcholine, which is a neurotransmitter that helps both, you know, short-term and long-term memory. So eggs are, you know, awesome source for that.
Yeah, no, I just, matter of fact, I had some eggs today before I had to go to this training class I went to. But everybody, you know, the thing is, there's so many different types of fitness, okay?
Mhm.
And I'll always, well, I shouldn't say, I hope to always be fit. My whole life I've tried to stay fit, and now I'm going to probably like the second to the last stage of my life, you know, if I live long. I'm still going to stay fit, you know, but I've never gotten super heavy. But now my fitness is, once I'm done with this metamorphosis, is going to be in a different way. I'm actually, Artie, reverting back to my high school, to my fitness level. Well, this is ideally to my high school fitness levels. Again, I won't be able to be that fast, but, you know, sprinting wise, but, you know,
but comparably, you know, might not be as fast, but you can still do it, which is
exactly.
Which is impressive for anybody over 30 to be comparable to their high school fitness.
Yeah, that's what I'm shooting for, and I'm almost there. Knock on wood, body weight wise. I mean, I'm heavier, more heavily muscled now, and and that'll always be. But I'm basing everything on body fat percentage, because when I graduated from high school, I was very fit from boxing, from doing the catch wrestling with Rodvan, from you know, especially track and field in high school.
Yeah.
So I want to be exactly at that same body fat percentage.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be there. I'm sure of it.
Not to compete with you, Tony. I mean, thinking about it, I'm actually about where I was in high school. I mean, you know, I
That's
wrestled
awesome.
I wrestled 189, but I was cutting down from about 210, and then, like I said, I'm about 215 right now.
See,
With more muscle than I had back then, and you know, more experience, more injuries, but that'll happen.
so I'm proud of you for doing that, man.
It's you know, it's something I needed to do. It's I've always been bad with food. Like I said, my sophomore year of college, I overate, and that made me go up multiple weight classes from where I should have been. And you know, it's getting that out of control. Something that's really improved my life in a lot of ways. You know, it's just on top of it too. I'm just setting a good example for my kid. I don't want to be the dad bod is not what I want them to aspire to be when they're grown adults. The dad bod should not mean the spare tire. That the dad bod should, you know, I guess it's not that I have abs or anything, but you know, I'm not ashamed of how I look anymore, I guess.
Now, I was the opposite of you, Artie. When I was a kid, I was always malnourished. I was always skinny. I was always thin. It was hard for me to put on size. And I carried that aspect until after I had my aneurysm in 93. So in like 1994 is when because of my friend Kevin, you never got to meet him, but it was when I was still at the Tool and Die Bensonville. You know, we just worked out as a team, you know, and I wanted to get psychologically, it was so traumatic what happened to me that I wanted to become like a Hercules, just because if it ever happened again, that kind of traumatic brain or any kind of injury, I would be so like strong and so big that I'd have a buffer if I got sick for
exactly. You
8
know,
months.
I am really surprised, you know, when you had Paul on recently that you guys didn't talk about that. He actually had an aneurysm not too long after I met him. And, you know, Paul Sharp.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know.
Yeah. He, like I said, not too long after I met him, he had an aneurysm. It was funny, you know, we were actually practicing, you know, so it was like a Sunday morning. We were doing no-gi that day. And he felt, you know, not good because Paul's very talented grappler. And, you know, he did not feel like himself. The fact that I was able to armbar him is a clear sign something was not right. Right after practice, he went to the hospital, had an aneurysm, almost died, and the doctor actually did tell him, you know, you would not have survived this if not for your fitness. I don't quote me, you know, that's, you know, obviously it's his story, but you know, the doctor basically inferred that his fitness pulled him through that, whereas a lot of other people may not have made.
That's what I was told. My level of fitness.
You're doing the right thing.
Me. Yeah. But, you know, I don't wish this on it. You know, I'm glad you shared the story of Paul, and I'm sharing mine because I don't want other people to have to get to that point. No, you know.
My mother had an aneurysm when I was real young. That was terrifying.
Yeah. Some people, like, what's her name? Sharon Stone had it, the actress. It paralyzed me on my right side, a weak in my left side, but my right side was gone. But so everybody, it can be different for people, like heart attacks. There's people who have silent heart attacks, you know, they don't know they had a heart attack. Others, it kills them, you know. So
they think it was a little bit of chest congestion, all good.
Yeah.
Take some what's that called? Take some Robitussin, you're all set.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a friend my friend's buddy, baby Marvin, was in his, I guess he was a heavy set guy. He was in his garage, just drinking beer, and he just didn't feel good, man. Didn't feel good, you know. And then a few days later, he finally goes to the hospital. He had a heart attack. He didn't know it. No, he just didn't feel good. But turns out he had a heart attack.
No,
Joe, huh?
It's interesting about the fitness too. I mean, my great grandfather, his job and career was refrigerator mover. He would carry refrigerators up at the high rises of Chicago, basically strap it to his back and walk up the stairs. You know, that is real old man, old school strength right there. You know, that's some rough stuff. And you know, the thing is, you know, he did this physical job, you know, 5 to 6 days a week, and then as soon as he retired, he was sedentary for less than a month. Heart attack, passed away, like couldn't save him.
You know what? Well, I'm sorry to hear. That's a shame.
Oh, this was long before I was born. Never met him, of course, but just that, the fact that, he was doing that level of work and just stopping it shocked his body enough. It is one of the weirdest things.
I knew a guy, he was at one point my next door neighbor as a kid in Cleveland. World War II veteran. Matter of fact, he was 1 year older than my grandfather, to give you his perspective.
Mhm.
And he worked at Park Drop Forge. He never missed in 30 years. He never once missed a day of work. Only one time he missed a half a day because he had to go to court for something. So
That's admirable.
he worked till he was 70. He retired, and then just months later he gets diagnosed with cancer. And then 6 months later he's dead after he retired. Never missed a day of work.
Such a shame.
Oh, horrible shame. I couldn't even go to the funeral. It bothered me so much. Because he's the guy, his name, we called him Pat, Arthur Eugene Patterson. But everybody called him Pat. He's the one who actually, when I was young, got me interested in weightlifting.
Yeah.
Because he would tell me all the stories of John Grimmick and Steve Stankel, because he met all those guys back in when he was like World War II times. And he would tell the stories. I'm sure he embellished them some, but whatever. He was a Southern boy from Parkersburg, West Virginia, living in Cleveland, and he just, man, I'd sit there every day listening to him with these stories, and it got me into wanting to be strong. And then eventually I met Rod Von, and it was all
Good guy to learn strength
weird.
from, of course.
Huh?
Good guy to learn strength from, someone that experience.
Yeah, well, Rod Von with the strength was at another level, but
Yeah.
Pat would tell me stories. Rod Von wasn't like that. Rod Von, he's a guy you don't, you stay at a distance. But Pat was so good, and he would play guitar, and like Chet Atkins, and it was entertaining. But so you had mentioned that I think you said his name was Mike Kelly, that kept you going with the wrestling or re-inspired you.
Absolutely. Mike is he's the guy, he's one of those dudes that never quit. He's 50, he's right around 50 years old. I want to say, I'm sorry if he's not, he's going to kick my ass. But anyways, he kept wrestling after college. He did a bunch of, he just got into grappling, no-gi jiu-jitsu and stuff. He multiple time Team USA member, multiple time world champion and placer, and that awesome grappler. Such a limited move set, but nobody could stop it. They know what he's going to do, and they can't stop his north-south choke. It's impeccable. And but yeah, that's really been my biggest, probably my longest term coach /practice partner /mentor in the whole sport. Paul was my mentor for a while, like one of my mentors for a while, but Mike Kelly, over the longest term. Like, I met the guy when I was a senior in high school at Plainfield Wrestling Club, and then just, got linked with him when I was in college, coached with him for a year. We were part of the same gym, wrestling out back when it existed. So he was my mentor. He was my rabbi.
Your audio seems to have adjusted. I
Yeah.
don't know if you're hearing that, Tony, but yeah.
Well, I just hope everybody, I've been lucky to have those mentors in music and in fighting, martial arts. I wish for other people to be able to find that. I've known a lot of people who were gifted. They'd never had that mentor or that person that would take them under their wing.
It's life-changing. It really is. Like I said, without Mike Kelly, I wouldn't be talking to you today. I would have probably stepped off the mat years ago and not come back on.
I can't hear you. Can you hear him, Joe?
Yeah, so no, his audio is kind of distorted now. It's like something changed. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
No.
It's not the same.
Maybe log out and log back in.
Yeah,
Joe will let you back in.
Yep.
But yeah, Joe, to keep things rolling while he's working on that, it's so important. And sometimes it's us. The mentor is there, but we blow it, right? Like I don't want to learn from this guy, or I don't want to, but then other times they just fall into place.
Well, I've often thought about it that how kind of magic it is when you have the right coach with the right athlete or right student, because sometimes I'm sure there's gifted people out there who just, they don't have, they get the wrong coach and they get missed. Let's hear you again.
Can you hear me, guys?
How
Yeah.
much better? Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, technology can be a bitch.
Well, let's talk about the next stage here with Artie and why things are what Joe, I'm struggling here with my memory here. Tell him basically what the plan is with Artie.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll shift. Yeah, because I actually had more questions about Artie's career, but yeah, we're
Yeah.
actually Marty's. Let's say that before we go any further. Is that yeah, Artie is looking to join the company and get all of its many benefits and help us out here and pitch in with helping us on social media. He reached out to us, so we put the call out there to the public, and Artie heard it and is willing to pitch in and help us. So we're very excited to have that. So, yeah.
I am
Well,
excited
let's
to be part of
basically
it.
spell it. Artie will be handling the social media aspect of it, because you people know that I don't do social media. I'm not going to do it. Yeah, and Artie's really gifted at it, and maybe Artie can talk a little bit about not about us, but about what he's done with the social media in
Yeah,
his
sure.
career. And he's going to try to launch like a Twitter or a face, what do you call it, TikTok or maybe we'll even, who knows? I mean, whatever he thinks. But tell us about what you've done in your business career with that.
Yeah, my background with that a bit, like I said, I was previously with MMA Warehouse. I was a customer service rep there, but also as being someone who's in the store, they would use me for things like blogs and, some suggestions for content and stuff. That's really where I kind of dipped my toes in a bit. After that, I ended up kind of not running along with two other people, a gear review blog, BJJ New Gear. So I was able to help a lot of smaller businesses get their stuff in front of a lot more eyes. There's these little companies that have, 200 followers. If I can bring images of their stuff and share it with my 14,000 member group, they're going to get a lot more eyes on it. And that was something really rewarding. We should all support small business, and that was kind of the goal of this endeavor. I was able to meet a lot of amazing people through it too, make some good connections. In addition to that, I was one of the people doing social media for Straight Blast Gym. Worked a lot on strategy there. There's a lot of strategies for getting people more eyes on your content. That's what's going to be most important. Not only the quality of the content, but kind of playing the algorithm so you're going to get more views. Things like posting at the right time, posting a certain number of times per day, like videos versus images, hashtags, geography tags. Those are all important things to utilize that unfortunately a lot of people miss out on. And just what I'm hoping to do for Tony and, Catch Wrestling program here is utilize those skills I picked up and hopefully have, similar levels of success, get more eyes on Catch Wrestling, get it spread through, whether it's someone that just wants to be a catch wrestler purely, or, it'd be a great add-on for judo guys, BJJ guys, straight up wrestling guys, more experience and more well-rounded background. Get more eyes on that and really, preserve, honor, and spread the art.
Yeah, that would be great, because for the last 25 years, the biggest thing I'm not a marketer. And while I was there pretty much at the beginning of the internet, I guess you'd say, I'm just not, that's not my thing,
No.
And
I've always, it's not everybody's thing,
no, it's not my thing.
It's something that I never thought I'd get into it, honestly. It was something that never really struck me until, like I said, after I left MMA Warehouse and there was no longer a conflict of interest. So I hopped on that blog, like martial arts is what got me into this. Martial arts has really opened a lot of doors in my life, martial arts and wrestling both. And, it's what got me into this. It's been the bulk of most of my projects. And yeah, like I said, it's not for everybody. It's just really something I found to be decent at, because I've always been, I've been that freaking nerd. I've been a researcher, a reader. I like data. I like to, put the puzzle together. How can you turn that data into results? That's something that, problem solving, that it's tricky. It's fun. It's cool.
Yeah, that's, I just don't, it's like gardening or, stuff like that. I don't have a green thumb for that.
And neither do I.
No, but I'm a tech guy. I'm tech. but I'm not like this stuff. You know, I used to build my own computers, and I used to build computers for my friends. I know
That's
about
awesome.
stereos, and that's my thing, electronics. This isn't, you know, but you know, we'll see where this goes. I mean, it can only go up, so you know, look at it that way. But yeah, I'm kind of reinvigorated with you since we had we had a Zoom meeting, everybody, the three of us, like last week, and just discussing this. And because I just kept it pretty much kept my mouth shut, just kept an open mind, asked a few questions, but I left on the Zoom pretty psyched, pretty stoked, because Artie, unlike a lot of people through the years who promised me the moon and never basically mooned me, is what they ended up doing. I didn't know what kind of moon they meant. You know, they promise you this, that. Artie just says, "Hey, this is what I can do." And I'm like, "Hey, okay." I told Joe afterwards, you know, this is great. Well, the first thing Joe said, of course, is, you know, Tony, Artie's not as good looking as me. I said, I know that, Joe. We all know that. But
Well, hey,
well, I mean, it's welcome to the club. But Joe's like, no, Joe's got confidence in you. I do.
I
My
like to,
huh?
I like to hear that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's your your persona. And but now, so ladies and gentlemen, when you see posts coming up on either YouTube, or if there's a new TikTok or Twitter, that'll be Artie will be the man behind the scenes. And you know, we'll keep everybody informed as we move forward and move along. And then Artie's going to start filming some clips during our seminars. Some we're going to use for the membership site, which will be excellent, because I can make a special thing for this membership site, but also, you know, for just public consumption, whatever.
Yeah. And the stuff we posting publicly will be, you know, small slices of that membership stuff, almost like a preview. So, you know,
Okay.
it'll show, I mean, you know, I think a good strategy with that is, you know, kind of show people a narrow window of it and make them curious for more. That's kind of my thinking, if that makes sense.
Okay. Now, Joe, you had some more questions about Artie's wrestling history here while you got disconnected.
Well, yeah, no, well, first I want to just say, as far as getting in and helping us out, the timing couldn't be more perfect. So I'm really excited. We're starting off a new year. Tony's now schedule is freed up. You know, obviously he was tied up a lot, taking care of his mother before, and that's not an issue now. So I'm really excited about the potential for this year, because Tony's available for seminars, you know, or whatever, personal training. And so the timing is, it seems like, you know, the stars are lining up on this. So I'm very excited about it and looking forward to working with you on that. But anyways, yeah, I was going to ask, so obviously I think this is almost going to be like a part 2 of the conversation, because we've been going on for over an hour. But so at a certain point you discovered judo, or how did you find judo?
I got into judo, actually, you know, I started out, like I said, grappling around, you know, just in the south suburbs. It was like a church with a grappling program that I stopped at for a while. Never joined the church, but the mats were fun. And that was actually under Japanese jiu-jitsu, which has a lot of commonality with judo. So that's kind of where I got my first taste of it, you know, wearing a gi and doing a lot of the more unique throws. And then when I was coaching down at Cumberland's, you know, I'm one of those people that's just very easily bored. I need something to do. I don't enjoy idle time. I got into reading a bit, and I bought a few judo books just out of curiosity, and, you know, started, you know, learn some of the, you know, things about it, some of the guiding principles, a little bit of the technique. It's tough to learn that stuff from books, but it helps, you know, when you do go and do it, it helps things click together a little better, at least. So that I started out doing, you know, just reading about it. And then after I came home from Cumberland, I went out to Atlas Extreme Team out in Yorkville. Like I said, I used to live down south. You know, it was about a 40-minute drive, but it was really worth it. Excellent judo players there. A lot of them came from a wrestling background. Like, you know, one of the coaches wrestled for NIU. You know, some jujitsu in there as well. It was a very, you know, open-ended judo program. Most of them only do like maybe 90% on the feet and 10% on the mat. We did probably like 60% on the feet and 40% on the mat. So it was a really good experience. Had a lot of fun in judo. after I ended up moving up north, I focused on, no-gi and jujitsu for a while. Just didn't really find a judo home until happened across South Elgin Budokan. Tom O'Shaughnessy, like I said, a real hidden gem in martial arts. He was an 8th degree black belt in judo. He was a member of the Irish Olympic team for the first Olympics to have judo. Really old school guy. He initially looked the part of the stereotypical out of shape martial arts instructor because he had the little ponytail. He kind of walked around and had that sensei look on his face. But at the same time, extremely fit, doing his morning workout involved 90-pound dumbbells, and that's quite impressive for an 80-year-old man, I'd say, especially considering he was only about 170. He would still get on the mat in his 80s and be just like unbearably painful. The first time he showed me a foot sweep, it was pretty much a Muay Thai kick to my leg. Which, hey, that's awesome. And his groundwork, his pinning, he's gouging, digging elbows, working really a lot of hard tissue versus soft tissue theory, and that's inspired me a lot. That's really helped, shape my game, grind on them. That's something that a lot of jujitsu and even a lot of wrestling misses, and that's something I think that's been really beneficial. And in addition to his judo, he was black belt in several karate styles. Back in Ireland, actually, too, he was a member of a carnival and did both boxing and wrestling. Taking on locals. He boxed more than he wrestled. He said, probably did 4 or 5 boxing matches for every wrestling match. But he talked about how you had to learn from the older guys, and especially in the boxing, you would have to take some punches and basically put on a show for the crowd, and that was really neat stories to hear about. So yeah, that's kind of my judo background. I ended up getting a brown belt, and then he unfortunately passed away not too long after that. So I still got my judo brown belt. I haven't really trained judo specifically in a while, but it's definitely a big part of my overall grappling game.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said there was a lot of wrestler guys. You found a lot of former wrestlers who had found their way into judo.
Not a lot, unfortunately. And it's, for the guys that want to keep wrestling, the high school guys that don't want to wrestle in college, or college guys that, want to find some way to stay on the mat, judo is an awesome outlet for that. There's a lot of similarities with wrestling, but enough differences that really keeps it interesting for former wrestlers, in my opinion. At that club, though, unfortunately, there was myself as a very recently former college wrestler, and then there was I'm embarrassed, I'm forgetting his name right. I believe his name was Justin. I'm so sorry if it wasn't, but he like I said, he wrestled for NIU. There was him, and then one guy that wrestled at the junior college level for half a season, and then the rest of it actually was more pure judo guys.
Did you find the conditioning and the background help you? Was it to make into judo? Did it just fit, or was it, did you feel you had some advantages there?
Immensely. Honestly, like I said, my wrestling background style was a lot more throwing techniques. So pretty much a lot of it was just adapting it to the rules of judo as far as how and when you can grip. I picked up a lot of awesome throws from judo that I've been able to transpose back into wrestling, because the next year after I was at Atlas, I was coaching up at Harper, and I was able to take some stuff that I learned in judo, fix the grips of it, and make it applicable in a no-gi in a wrestling situation, which is really fun to do. So for example here, my first judo practice, they usually don't allow white belts to spar, not white belts, or rather people during their first 2 weeks to spar, but being that I had a background, they let me go in, and I was tossing the colored belts around, using wrestling stuff, not traditional judo stuff. It was more, it was not as pretty, it wasn't as flashy, but I was taking them from their feet to their back, which is the objective of the sport. And then my first ever judo tournament I did, after just 3 weeks of training judo, and I entered the brown and black belt division as a white belt, because it's honestly not fair for someone with that much wrestling background to go against white belts. I don't care who you are, it's just not fair. There's a massive leg up that wrestling gives to judo, jiu-jitsu, MMA, especially in the early stages. And like I said, that first tournament, I've been in judo for 2 weeks. I entered the brown and black belt division. My first ever judo match, I beat a brown belt. I threw him with what the judo would call koshiguruma, or what Americans would call, I guess, a headlock hip toss. It worked. It threw him, and like I said, he was a brown belt, I was a white belt, but that didn't really matter too much. I ended up going to the Illinois State tournament in judo twice, both times as a white belt. Both times I was champion of the brown and black belt division, and wrestling and some of the jiu-jitsu really carried me through that. There's a lot of similarities between the art, and judo just happened to be, the objectives of judo really lined up with a lot of my skill sets. So I was able to have, some fun and decent success there. Like I said, 2-time state champion. I won the AU nationals. I haven't had a chance to compete at any bigger judo events, but it's been a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
That's
It's
great.
interesting to hear. Yeah, that you were, so dominant in the judo, but that you were actually able to still to take things from judo and bring it back into your wrestling. So that wasn't just that you went in there and used your wrestling to dominate these judo guys, but that you were learning things that you brought back into wrestling. That's kind of
it's funny because it was, I would struggle to use these things in judo against the judo guys, but then the wrestling people have no idea what, for example, a judo throw, they call it osotogari. It's a, Tony might be familiar with it. It's basically like a big outside tripping move, and it's tricky. It's tricky to set up without a gi, but it's possible. And my wrestlers could not defend it. Bless their hearts, but they could not defend it to save their lives. And it was especially useful against the heavyweights, the bigger guys, because they stood more upright. Heavyweights are not as, sorry to say, I can say this because I was one, but heavyweights are not as disciplined about staying in their stance. They'll go upright. And if you go upright, when someone's trying to hit a move like that, done. And, that's just learning that from judo, because they do stand upright, and that's what you're used to attacking.
Well, that's really interesting to hit an osotogari in wrestling. I would have never thought it was possible.
Like I said, it's tricky, but it's possible. It's part of it is they have to stand upright for it. It's tough to hit against someone in their stance. I wouldn't even try it.
I've always been a fan of judo. I don't know, it's just, even since I was, well, again, I'm older than both of you guys, but even before my time, like in the 60s, judo was the big martial art in this country, and even parts of the 70s. And I'll tell you something, both in Cleveland at the Cleveland Public Library, and when I moved to Chicago, I went to the Chicago Library downtown, the main library, and I would look at the old telephone books, because this is back before all the, they had microfilm and microfiche, but 90% of the schools in both cities were judo schools. When you look back in the 60s and 70s phone books, you can do that now. I'm sure you can go on microfilm and just look it up. Just pick a random year.
I've actually, when I was in college, I had to go to an older library. I was like, I want to say it's a Crown Point, Indiana library. And in the archives, like I had to go dig down an old newspaper article from the 1800s, and I saw phone books in there. So yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that's the case, because in my honest opinion, the person who shaped martial arts the biggest, modern martial arts at least, is Dr. Jigoro Kano, the founder of judo. There's no question about it. He invented the gi as training equipment. He invented the belt ranking system. He didn't invent it, but he really made the standard of a martial art, having a curriculum, having a set plan. And that really made things a lot more consistent. It's, if not for his efforts, karate wouldn't be where it is. Jiu-jitsu wouldn't exist. It would be, quite different. Like his influence can be seen in every single martial arts school, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, it's an interesting transition from then to now. And like yourself, Artie, when I was younger than even what you are now, I was very into research. It was much more difficult. Well, it wasn't difficult. It was more, you couldn't just go to your room and look it up on an internet thing. You actually had to go to the library, or you had to do whatever.
Yeah,
but it was fun.
Absolutely. Even though research, you can get content a lot easier now. Like there's still some stuff you have to dig for. Like I'm sure those old phone books, you wouldn't be able to find them online if you had a million hours. It's unfortunate too that a lot of that paper back then is not going to last forever. So we're losing a lot of print resources that we're never going to get back.
Well, this isn't martial arts related, but there's things that I'm into that nobody else really is. I say that, tongue in cheek, but like accordion and accordion players and so on. And outside of the celebrity accordionists, there's so many gifted accordion players that were before my time that I just knew their names. There's nothing about these people on the internet. I mean, nothing. They're lost forever, right?
No, I mean, accordion, even within the realm of jazz, is more obscure than a lot of people realize. I was in jazz band in high school, and I also in college for my music elective, I took a history of jazz class. We did not have an accordion in our jazz band in high school, and
Oh,
very little bit of our history of jazz class featured accordion. We were talking about, the trumpet, of course, the saxophone, the electrification of the guitar and bass. But the accordion, I don't remember barely anything.
we were blessed a few months ago to have Corey Pesaturo, who's a world champion accordionist, jazz accordionist, and digital accordionist on here. And and we talked before and even afterwards about that. Yeah, but that's just an example of one thing. Now imagine other things that interest people that I have no idea about.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to martial arts, I'm actually a very passionate coin collector, something I've enjoyed since I was a little kid. But I mean, I remember I've specifically a few times posted on my Facebook, hey, any of my friends into coin collecting, blah, blah, blah. Not a single response at all. It's a rare hobby, but it's fun. To me,
well, I used to get into that when I was a kid, numismology or whatever they called it. I forgot.
Numismatics, yep.
Yep. But you know what? The thing is, people now are under the assumption that everything is on the internet, and it's really not. Again, there's so much or things, stories that aren't, on the internet. And but getting back to the point of it, when I was a kid, Cleveland Public Library was the third or the fifth, I don't remember, the third or the fifth largest library in America. It was just gigantic. And I spent a lot of time there researching weightlifting and do whatever, and martial arts, music, and hours and hours and hours and hours. And I miss doing that. That was a great experience because it got me out of the bad neighborhood, and I'm with all this fancy like artwork and just it was beautiful for a kid.
I mean, people don't often realize or appreciate just the value of being in an aesthetic environment.
Yeah, there you go.
If you're spending your time in a place that looks nice, you're going to feel better as opposed to if you're spending it in a dingy little shithole.
You're right. And see, that's a great way. See, you think about it like I do, because I find myself, well, this is kind of personal, I probably shouldn't talk about it, but I find myself staying in my room all the time, and not even venturing out of my room. And that's sign number one of depression and so on. You can't do that. But for me, Artie, I'm really, really isolated where I live, the community where I live, this town, which is a mistake for a guy like me. I need to be around the city where I could go. Like I said, if I wanted to go to the Chicago Public Library, it's not that big of a deal if I was in the city.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but getting out of Chicago from the suburbs is a pain. I mean, especially, you said you're in unincorporated McHenry or Wonder Lake, something like that.
Yeah, Wonder Lake.
Yeah, that is out there. You like, not only is it far, but you don't have great highway access. So it's going to take.
I have none.
It's going to take forever to get to the city compared to even if you live like even in Elgin. It's pretty far from the city, but I'm right off 90.
You're right off 90. And another thing that we don't have out here is no public transportation in McHenry area at all. Okay, so that's a big deal. And part of it, well, you're married, you have kids, so you have people. But when you're isolated like myself, just hopping on a bus, even if you don't talk to anybody, just being around people for me is a wonderful thing. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And like even if it's as simple as stepping outside, not only we have the hippy dippy thing, if we're around prettier things, we're going to feel better, the aesthetic. But I mean, just the scientific fact that sunlight will boost certain neurotransmitter levels and keep you out of that funk.
Yeah,
sunlight's amazing.
So right.
Sunlight's amazing to you until you overdo it and do skin cancer. You got to find the perfect balance, I guess. But
yeah, well, that's true too. But you're right on about and you lose. What I fight is not to lose my street edge, When you're out here, people, it's safer on paper, right? You're never safe anywhere, but
No.
generally, I'll never lose my edge. I purposely look for trouble. I don't want to say I look for trouble, but I always look for potential issues. Whereas everybody else is conditioned white. Okay, I'm not conditioned red, but I'm at least conditioned yellow at all times. I know what's going on. I'm fully aware.
Absolutely.
And that's the one thing I don't ever want to lose. I just don't. But you know what? We've been going on for about an hour and a half. I want Artie back on for part 2 of this.
Yeah, we can set that up.
Joe, I'm talking to you.
Oh,
Hello,
absolutely.
Joe.
I'm sorry, I woke up. Hello. I'm sorry. We're
Okay.
still podcasting? No, yeah, very much so, because I feel like we just got the first half of the story. We haven't
Yeah.
talked about Artie's
Yeah, I mean,
jiu-jitsu
there-
work or
definitely in the future. Definitely in the future, like we barely talked about Paul, in addition to, Mike Kelly kind of being my longer term mentor, even though I was with Paul, about 4 years, he shaped, my grappling style so much, so immensely. So, definitely big chat to be had there.
I'd love to
Yeah,
have
we'll
both
do
you
it.
guys on together, actually. That'd be kind of a cool podcast. And,
Thank
I want to apologize right now because I realized we didn't plug your school at the beginning. So let's
Yeah.
do it now, and then we'll definitely put it in the YouTube links right away.
Yeah, so I train at Illinois Martial Arts Academy out in Algonquin, under Chuck Masney. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. He also black belt in karate, doesn't really do it as much anymore. He's a brown belt in judo. We actually met at the Illinois State Judo Tournament. I competed against one of his guys. And, one problem judo has is with its obscurity a bit. It's tough to find adult practice partners, especially over 200 pounds. And, we just linked up because he had a student that was a big guy about my size. We worked together and, that's how we initially met. And when Paul left the area, it was just a natural transition to go with Chuck.
Nice.
Yeah, but we definitely need to have a follow-up episode, sooner than later. And,
Yeah,
absolutely gonna have you welcome. Obviously, now as you're joining the team, you're welcome to join in on any other podcasts we have as we have other guests. Because I think your
yeah.
perspective and your questioning would be added, to any conversation. So
That could be fun. Yeah, we'll have to work that out in the future. I'd love to be, on the other side of things at some point also.
Co-host. I do want to mention to everybody out there that I'm going to be trying to bring on a special guest within the hopefully maybe next weekend or soon, working around his schedule. Of course, Joe handles all of that, so I'll put Joe in touch with him. Very interesting fellow. Was a martial arts instructor, but he's not doing that. He's a very top-notch gun shooting instructor,
Nice.
and everything involved around that. I really want to get him on here to talk nuts and bolts about firearms, because we've had a lot of guests on here, but we haven't had a specialist on firearms. And this man, I can now call and consider a friend. And I spent yesterday and today learning from him stuff regarding guns and just things along those lines. You don't ever want to stop learning. And
No, of course.
you don't. And sometimes this is all related for me. Everything is self-defense oriented. So, it's like a language. If you mastered English and you mastered Italian, maybe now you want to learn French or Greek, So yeah, I want to get this gentleman on. His name is John Hernandez. He's from the area, Woodstock.
Awesome.
So that's not far from, but anyway, I do want to say to everybody that I am very excited to have Artie back in my life, and along with Joe's. And we're looking for a lot of good things out of Artie, but also I just want to get back to getting Artie on the mat and getting him back rolling and with the catch wrestling, not rolling, but what I mean, get him back on the game.
I will say, doing jujitsu, the thing everybody hates about training with me is the shin lock.
Oh yeah, well, we're going to do a lot of rips.
Jiu-jitsu guys, for some reason, don't do that as much. But I mean, that's part of catch wrestling. That's always going to be part of my game.
Yeah, well, you're gonna get, you know, you only met me once, that's gonna change. Obviously, you're gonna learn a
Yeah.
lot of nasty things
I
you've
think
never
we
seen
can
even
next weekend,
on the
probably.
video.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing about it is when I do these seminars now, the way they are, I don't even have a plan. Let's just wing it, you know, and that's how I like it, because then I work off of what the people are doing there, and you're gonna learn, I don't mean you specifically, but in general, you're gonna see things that you've never seen on video before, because the situation is different than anything you've seen on video before. So that's what I
Absolutely, yeah.
like. Yeah, but anyway, everybody, we're gonna let you go. Thank you, Joe, for being on here once again. Artie, Martin was going to be on tonight, but he sent an email shortly before this launch that he had something coming up with his kids. But Martin wants to get back on again. So, Joe, your parting thoughts?
No, this is a really great episode. Like I said, I can't wait to start working with Artie more. And no, it's the start of a great kickoff to the year.
I think so.
All right, buddy. Everybody, we'll see you. Take care. See you next week.
Good. Have a great night, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.